Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Wyndham Championship Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into. The Wyndham has been played at Sedgefield for several years now, so we have a lot of leaderboards that we want to check, try to figure out the metrics and the players that are going to play the best this week at Sedgefield as we close the 2023 PGA Tour regular season and get set up for the playoffs. Quite excited, so let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check them out. It is simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my Twitter and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier today around the previous winners of the Wyndham Championship at Sedgefield going back to 2015. So if you want to see the research that I posted, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. Twitter is also where I place my betting cards weekly on the PGA Tour. That will be no different. That'll come out Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. And then finally, for social media, Gabe's Twitter is in the description as well. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. I highly suggest that you go follow him on Twitter and subscribe to that article. It is free. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you will be able to join myself and him in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening for some continued DFS talk that happens after calls on Wednesday evenings. So make sure you show some support to Gabe by following him on Twitter and subscribing to that article. Again, it is free and it's a very good read. Gets you very well prepared for the week at hand. And then finally, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. We had quite a few winners this past week at the 3M. So again, if you were successful and did not receive the shout out, then jump in chat. Let me know. That way I will be able to shout you out. I want to be able to congratulate members of the community who have success moving forward to the Wyndham. Who do you think plays their way into the playoffs? Who has the advantage? What do you know of Sedgefield? How do you think it's going to play this week? All of that. Am looking forward to the interaction in chat, so join me in there. But let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Wyndham Championship. And we're going to start, as we always do on a Monday evening, over at WinFinder, get a first look at what the forecast is calling for in the week. And you see Thursday looks like there could be some rain, but a lot of wind. And I'm going to go to the historic conditions very, very quickly. There hasn't been a whole lot of wind at this tournament in years past. In fact, there's been no windy conditions and only a few rounds of moderate. So it's looking like Thursday, at least gusting wise, could have some issues. And this rain looks like it's lasting throughout the evening and into Friday morning. Again, we are 2.5 days away from the first tee, so this forecast could change quite a bit. But as of right now, you would be thinking about some possibility of a delay, perhaps on Thursday evening or Friday morning, moving into another Saturday cut. But after this system moves in, and it does look like the winds pick up and whatnot, it looks like it's a warm front actually, but the winds really die down on Saturday and Sunday. Both of those days look fantastic. A high of mid-80s, maybe reaching into the upper 80s, but no wind and no rain after what appears to be a front coming through Thursday evening. So we will keep a close eye on this. I suggest you keep a close eye on this throughout the week as we get close to Thursday morning and especially Wednesday to finalize our lineups and how the weather and forecast is going to shake out. But we will move to Fantasy National. I will need a moment here as I get this prepped for a couple of metrics that we want to look at, because we just saw the Wind Finder forecast. We are going to look at some wind metrics here, and this reminds me that there have been 2 more field changes that I know of. Keith Mitchell has withdrawn this week. Davis Love III has withdrawn this week. So that brings the total number of players to 5 who originally committed to play in the Wyndham and have not, or are not now for the week. So those 5 players, Keith Mitchell, Davis Love, I have seen those from earlier today, and then from earlier in the weekend, but mentioned last night in the show, Lee Hodges, Taylor Montgomery, and Luke List. So those 5 players are not playing in the Wyndham Championship this week, so make sure you make a note of that. But in moderate and windy conditions, because we just saw in Wind Finder that the wind really does look like it's picking up for Thursday and maybe Friday morning, so there could be a round or 2 that is played in some significant windy conditions. Our top wind performers since the beginning of 2022 playing at the Wyndham this week: Sungjae, Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, Chris Kirk, Sam Burns, Billy Horschel, Hideki, Scott Piercy, Scott Stallings, Adam Scott, and Alex Noren. So there's your top 11 in terms of wind. Something else that we can and probably should look at, I think we took a quick look at this last night. Let's take a look at performance on short courses. Even though this is a par 70, the course still measures to 7,130 or so yards. So still a short course in a vacuum. It's a little bit longer in terms of, or at least medium length in terms of a par 70. But for short courses, those are defined as less than 7,200 yards on Fantasy National. On short courses, our top performers since 2022, or the beginning of 2022: Russell Henley, JT Poston, Sungjae, Eric Cole, Denny McCarthy, Ben Griffin, Chris Kirk, Andrew Putnam, Shane Lowry, and Thomas Detry. Again, skipping a couple of players who have withdrawn here. Let's see. The last thing that we want to look at in terms of total performance, again, a review from last night, but Sedgefield is the prototypical Don Ross design. Parkland, tree-lined, sloping fairways, very sloping greens. So I will have to expand the timeline here, go all the way back to 2019 just to get enough rounds to make it significant. The Don Ross designs that are on the PGA Tour, other than Sedgefield, we have Detroit Golf Club, the host of the Rocket Mortgage, and Eastlake, the Tour Championship. But not every single, or not a lot of players, in fact, are going to have some data from Eastlake. So really, we're taking performance at Detroit and at Sedgefield, perhaps a little bit of Plainfield. So on Don Ross designs, going back to the beginning of 2019, our top performers have been Taylor Moore, Taylor Pendrith, Chris Kirk, Russell Henley, Adam Hadwin, Cam Davis, Sungjae, Stephan Jaeger, Troy Merritt, and JT Poston. So a lot of overlap there. I know Poston was there for short courses, is in there for Don Ross now. Sungjae has been up there for seemingly all 3. Russell Henley was up there. Chris Kirk up there in 2 of the 3 at least. So there is an idea in terms of total performance, who you might want to focus on as you move forward through this week. But now, let's go ahead and jump straight to the prior leaderboards. We've got a lot that we want to figure out, and a lot that we were surmising last night when looking at Sedgefield from a Microsoft Excel standpoint. So let's see if we can't figure out, by going through the prior leaderboards, some things that we want to narrow in on. So in terms of strokes gained, Convenient cutoff here, just top 20, convenient for ties. Again, I made the big point last night, and I'll continue to make it this week. This, I feel, is a second shot course by far, particularly strokes gain approach. I mean, it's a ball striking course, but particularly the second shot type course. You see only 2 players in the top 20 last year were negative in terms of approach. 4 players negative and off the tee, but really only one was really bad, and it was really, really bad. It was Richie Wierenski. All the others are less than 1 shot under field average. So again, backing up the belief that it is a a ball striking course. Putting is going to have a decent factor, but it is not mandatory, especially since we are on a surface change. We've been bent and POA, all kinds of combinations. We are on pure Bermuda this week. I don't see it playing a humongous factor. It could, and you see Tom Kim last year gained 12.5. I mean, just video game numbers. But if you sort on that putting after Tom Kim, look at this correlation or lack thereof. Clunkers and middling finishes. You do have some elite finishes, second, or runner up from John Huh and Sung Jae, but it's not all that correlating. Tom Kim just, like I said, put up video game numbers on the greens last year. In terms of approach, hopefully you can see just the extreme correlation here, especially when you compare it to the putting. 5th, 8th, 13th, 8th, 2nd. I mean, all of these single-digit finishes. You do have a missed cut up here, and some clunkers have made cuts for sure, but a whole lot of premier finishes when you sort on the putting. You got your cut makers, but nothing truly elite other than Tom Kim. And if we look at 2021 and the strokes gained, we'll see quite a bit of the same. This is the top 14 for ties. None of the 14 negative in terms of strokes gained approach. Now, putting was quite a bit more for those 14, only 2 players negative in terms of putting. But again, the correlation is much stronger than 2022, definitely. But it's not elite. You don't have a string of single-digit finishes. You have a runner-up and you have a winner up here, and good finishes, top 15s and top 10s. But it's nothing to the approach. 7th, 2nd, 2nd, 2nd. Again, some more middling finishes. 10th, 2nd, 15th, 1st. Approach is going to be the main facet of strokes gained this week at the Wyndham. So let me get this prepped for the next page view that I want to look at. But we will bring this back in to, actually, first, let's go to the start of 2022 before I do just this calendar year. 2022, we are on we are on Bermuda greens. So, Bermuda, and we talked about this last night. It has been several years since we had anything other than fast. The GCSAA tournament fact sheet lended itself to perhaps opening the door to Lightning, listing a stimp at 12.5. That is close to Lightning. It would still be fast, I think. But 12.5 could lend itself to Lightning, especially if the rain doesn't come. It's going to play firm and fast, especially with the slopes on these greens. But we're going to just look at fast Bermuda because that's all Sedgefield has had for the past 8 or so years. So our top performers, or our top putters on fast Bermuda greens in the field this week for the Wyndham are Ben Griffin, Alex Noren, Andrew Putnam, Ben Taylor, Justin Suh, Denny McCarthy, Sam Burns, Martin Traynor, Brendan Todd, and Brian Gay. There's your top putters. and it'll have a little bit of a factor in my mixed condition model, I'm sure. However, the biggest thing we want to look at is strokes gained approach. So, since the beginning of this calendar year, our top strokes gained approach players playing in the Wyndham this week: Alex Smalley, Hideki, Gary Woodland, Russell Henley, Eric Cole, Mark Hubbard, Kevin Roy, Shane Lowry, Aaron Rai, and Nate Lashley. Now, this will be a little bit different once the mixed condition model comes on Wednesday, as I will narrow this down a little further into a sample size rounds, or number of rounds filter. But just for your research, your information as we move on this, as you move forward this week, here are your top approach players the entirety of the calendar year. While I'm here, we can go ahead and look at the 24. These are your best approach players recently in the past 24 rounds, as long as it's within 2023. You see somebody like CT Pan only has 20 rounds. Our top approach players in good form, our top strokes gained approach players the past 24 rounds: Russell Henley, Adam Schenk, Alex Smalley, Hideki, Mark Hubbard, Gary Woodland, Aaron Rai, Lucas Glover, Ches Reavie, and Siwoo Kim. So a lot of overlap here for sure. Russell Henley, Smalley, Hideki, Hubbard, Woodland, these guys are always going to be up there generally for strokes gained approach. But some newer names in the bottom half of this top 10 in terms of recent form with the irons: Ches Reavie, Lucas Glover, Siwoo, Doug Gim, just outside the top 10 there in irons. So there's a good look at what you want to focus on moving forward this week from a strokes gained perspective. All right, moving into fairways and greens, driving distance and all that. It's going to be pretty darn simple on this tab, or on this page view. Again, the top 20, just due to ties. You do have a few players that are negative in fairways gained, absolutely. But distance doesn't matter. It would appear that greens do, but these aren't really all that big numbers for greens in regulation gain. You do have a 10 from Chesson Hadley, but a lot of lower numbers. 8th, 27th, and you already have a missed cut really high up here in terms of greens in regulation. Fairways, more so your cut makers, but you also have 5th, 5th, and 1st up here to go with these middling to clunker finishes. Miscut a little bit further down in Matthias Schwab and Davis Love. Distance, not really a thing. I mean, look, the best of these finishes is 13th. You got several missed cuts very high up here. It's all about the fairways here at Sedgefield. 2021, much the same. Fairways and greens. Again, quite a few players negative when you look at the top 14 or 15 or so. But look at the distance. I mean, the highest in distance is a 26.6. That's not very high at all. Fairways, we sort 10th. A miscut from Ches Reavie, 7th, 15th, 2nd, 10th. Very, very strong. Greens would appear to be stronger, but once we go to Microsoft Excel, I'll show you why I still think it's the fairways as opposed to the greens. And these numbers weren't even as high as 2022's 9.1, all the way down to a 7.1 for 4th, when 7.1 generally isn't in the top 10 for greens in regulation. So I'm going to tell you now, it is all about the fairways at Sedgefield. That is what I'm focused on. So I will set this and get this ready for the next page view. Our top fairways gained players this calendar year. No filters. I don't want to do anything with a filter on this, I don't think, unless the wind really, really picks up. I am hesitant to use the easy to par scoring filter because there have been several rounds that have been average. Now, consistently, the Wyndham Championship is generally easy to average. It's definitely not difficult, but again, last year played to basically average. You had 2 rounds of easy and 2 rounds of average in 2021. Same in 2020. I don't feel comfortable using the easy to par filter. That would be the one I would use if I were to use one. I'm just going to kind of look at fairways gained. And our top fairways gained players this calendar year: Aaron Rai, Russell Henley, Ryan Moore, Adam Long, Lucas Glover, Ryan Armour, Brendan Todd, Siwoo Kim, Satoshi Kodaira, and Tyler Duncan. Again, Russell Henley has had an enormous amount of success here at Sedgefield. Believe Adam Long has played somewhat well here. Brendan Todd generally plays well here. Webb Simpson, never going to be long off the tee. He is all about fairways. So that is what I'm looking at in terms of the driving distance, fairways, greens, the driving page view. Little interesting, I'll make this note. Gabe mentioned scrambling, and while I understand it, because scrambling is slightly easier here than the tour average event, scrambling does happen quite a bit with these sloping greens. That might be where him and I are different this week. I don't see scrambling being a big deal, enough to put it in the mixed condition model. Maybe some around the green, but again, I'm really just kind of focused on the fairways from this page view. All right, we'll go to birdies and bogeys. We look at the scoring page view. In the top 20, one player negative in terms of birdies gained. You had several that were negative in bogeys avoided, but they're getting rounded to 0. It's very, very close. -2 is really the only one that is significantly negative in terms of bogeys avoided for the Wyndham. But the higher numbers are definitely in the birdies gained, a 9.1 versus a 7. And your winner led in both. But higher numbers definitely in the birdies gained. First, fifth, fourth, second, pretty correlating. First, 47th, 4th, 13th, still an important factor, but definitely more so of the birdies gained. A few eagles, and that's why we'll look at birdies are better gained, but nothing for eagles in of themselves, as there's only 2 par 5s here at Sedgefield. And then just to really bring the point home, hammer it home, 2021, you see the winner the top, 5 here? So 5 of the top 6 were heavily leaning into the birdies gained versus the bogeys avoided. Top 14. Interestingly enough, you had more players negative in birdies gained, but again, getting rounded to 0. If we sort a 10, so second, 24th, first, 15th, second, 7th, 7th. So, did a lot of correlation right there. Whereas the bogeys avoided, again, it's good performances, but you don't have the plethora of single-digit finishes. And again, a few eagles, but nothing enough to warrant looking on their own. So I'll get this prepared for the metric that I really want to scrutinize. But we'll come to this year's field and the page view for the scoring metrics. We're going to look at birdies are better. Generally speaking, I would look at birdies are better when it's easy. But again, I talked about how I'm not comfortable with it because there's been quite a few rounds of average. This tournament has gotten a little bit more difficult the past 4 or so years. So our top birdies or better gained players in the field this week, this calendar year: Sung Jae, Denny McCarthy, Adam Scott, Nikolai Højgaard, Dylan Wu, Siwoo Kim, Justin Thomas, Akshay Bhatia, Eric Cole, and Harry Hall. Perhaps a decent thing to do would be to look at birdies are better and opportunities. That could be a way to go about it. So you definitely want to highlight Sung Jae in that regard. Very good in opportunities and very good birdies or better gained. Nikolai Højgaard would probably be an honorable mention. Siwoo Kim and Justin Thomas, elite at both. Akshay Bhatia and Eric Cole, very high in both. Chris Kirk, I would have said Keith Mitchell, but he withdrew. Ludwig Aberg. Scott Piercy, 24th, 19th. Kevin Yu, Hideki. There's a few names for you that have given themselves a lot of opportunities this calendar year, and they've been converting on with birdies or better gained. But we are going to be focused solely on the birdies or better gained, or at least I'm going to be solely focused on the birdies or better gained. I suppose we could look at a couple of different filters for birdies or better if we're not going to do easy. First one that came to my mind, we could look at birdies or better on Don Ross courses. It's going to be a small sample size, but we know that this is the prototypical Don Ross design. So your top birdies or better gained players on Don Ross designs, going back to 2019, Taylor Moore, Cam Davis, Stefan Jaeger, Taylor Pendrith, Sung Jae, Brian Stewart, first time I think we've said him tonight, Justin Lauer, Webb Simpson, someone who has played the Wyndham exceptionally well in his career, Justin Thomas, and Alex Smalley. So again, a whole lot of overlap between total performance on Don Ross and these birdies are better gained. But certainly interesting to look at is, Brian Stewart. That might be the first time we've mentioned him tonight. Justin Lauer, I don't think we've mentioned, or if we have, it's not very often. Taylor Moore was up there in terms of strokes gained total. He might have been the leader strokes gained total on Don Ross design. So you see he's just been going low on those courses. Smalley's been up there. So there you go. And then another thing we could look at for birdies are better gained, just for argumentative sake or for informational purposes, you can look at birdies are better on short courses. So our top birdies are better gained players when a course is short. Justin Thomas. Oh shoot, I need to bring this in because that's a whole lot of rounds. My apologies. So bring this into the beginning of 2022. We still have the short course filter on. Our top birdies are better gained players when courses are short since the beginning of 2022. Adam Svensson, Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, Stuart Sink, Denny McCarthy, Justin Thomas, Cam Davis, Patton Kazire, and Adam Scott. All right, we will now bring in proximity, and I want to look at it just from this calendar year, but there's a lot that we want to focus on because we saw in Microsoft Excel how important it was historically here at Sedgefield. So again, the top 20, we look only 3 negative in terms of total procs, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As I was mentioning last night, when we took a look at the course breakdown, proximity is actually much closer to the hole here than at the average tour event. So that would lend itself to thinking proximity is not a big deal if everyone is generally getting closer to the hole. But look at these total proxies. I mean, only 3 negative. If we sort, some pretty solid correlation, especially considering proximity's general lack of correlation. You got Shane Lowry, who made the cut and then fell apart, I guess, on the weekend last year. But Martin Laird, middling, a lot of good performances. Top 15, top 10, top 5, top 15, a couple more top 10s. The winner's not up here in terms of total procs, but he was still pretty darn solid. The overwhelmingly prominent approach shot length here at Sedgefield is 150 to 175. Almost 27% of your approach shots come from that length. So if we look at last year's leaderboard, again, cut makers, you had Russell Henley, who was very good, but it's not direct correlation, especially compared to total procs. And if we sort on the actual leaderboard, quite a few players negative from 150 to 175. So this would lend itself to me believing that it's total procs. This is why I like to go back through previous leaderboards just to get a feel for how it played that year. Again, top 14, look, only one player negative in terms of total procs. A few in the 150 to 175. Procs total, oh my goodness. Second, 10th. Some middling to, decent finishes, top 25s, middlings to maybe a clunker if you want to consider that a clunker from Aaron Wise, but 10th, 15th, 2nd. Again, your winner's not extremely high in total procs, but they still performed well in the statistic. Whereas in the 150 to 175, you got a miscut fairly high. Your premier finishes are a little bit further down. I'm really starting to believe it is total procs based on at least the past couple of years prior leaderboards, and I don't want to go through every single one, but that's what I'm seeing. And we can confirm that when we go to Microsoft Excel. But for the field this week, let's remove the filter. Our top total procs players this calendar year in the field this week at the Wyndham: Lucas Glover, Nate Lashley, Russell Henley, Ches Reavie, Hideki, Michael Kim, Davis Riley, Ryan Armour, Justin Suh, and Alex Smalley are your top 10 in terms of total proximity. The only one that is elite at both total procs and the length, or the most prominent approach shot length here, would be Hideki, 5th in total, 2nd from 150 to 175. Good evening, Joey. Thanks for jumping in chat. Glad to see you. Looking forward to hopefully another very successful week, and hopefully you'll be able to go back to back in terms of taking down contests over on FanDuel. But thanks for jumping in chat. If we want to sort on the 150 to 175, I don't think it's incorrect to look at it, but I'm still leaning toward total procs. But our top 150 to 175 proximity players this calendar year in the field this week: Russell Knox, Hideki, Siwoo Kim, Ryan Moore, Brandon Wu, Adams Vinson, Scott Piercy, Troy Merritt, Ben Martin, and Aaron Rye. So I would really kind of limit it to these top 5 here in terms of giving players, the full star for proximity, like Hideki, Russell Knox, and Siwoo, Ryan Moore, Brandon Wu. They're getting honorable mentions for sure. I mean, they're in the top 30, at least in terms of total procs. Very good at the specific length. A couple others down here: Lucas Glover, Michael Kim, very good at procs and the specific length. Maybe Bazay as well, 22nd and 17th. So there's a few names for you in terms of procs, but the more I looked at it today, the more I truly believe we're going to be looking at total proximity. Maybe we'll take a gander, and when I say we'll take a gander or whatnot, meaning put it in the mixed condition model, we might have it 150 to 175, but it will not be nearly as much as the total procs if it's in there at all. All right, we're going to wrap up Fantasy National by looking at the 3s, 4s, and 5s. Par 3s, again, one par 3 measures into each of these 4 ranges. 0 to 150 rarely gets used throughout the week. The par 3s did get played well by the winner last year and the runner-up, but it's generally not a huge factor. As you can see, the correlation really falls off quickly. And in 2021, we look at par 3s. I mean, they were played okay, but high missed cut, 51st, 51st. We're going to be looking at total par 3s, and it's not going to have a lot of weight. We'll have some, but not a whole lot. Instead, it's going to be the par 4s. But our top par 3 performers In the field this week, this calendar year, Sam Burns, Adam Schenk, Eric Cole, Sam Ryder, Nikolai Højgaard, Ben Griffin, Christian Bezuidenhout, Siwoo Kim, Nate Lashley, and Shane Lowry. But the biggest is going to be these par fours. I mean, huge, huge numbers. Top 20, not a single player negative in terms of total par fours. Only one player negative in the 400 to 450 par fours. If we sort, not as correlating, but still fairly strong. Fourth, top 25, top 10, a couple of top 15s, top 10, a middling. And I mean, you have a miscut from Ryan Brim up here, fairly high. But your winner, fairly high in the specific length of par fours. If we sort on the par fours in general, I mean, 4th, 8th, 5th, 1st, 8th, a couple of 21st. I mean, it's just it's a big deal here at Sedgefield. 2021. Again, par fours. Not a single player negative, even beyond the top 14. If we look at the top 23, not a single player negative. So, big deal. Again, in the specific length of par fours, not a single player negative in either 350 or 354s or 400 450s. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll get one of each. But it's really in these 400 450s. Second, first, 10th, 8.4 out of a 9.2 in the strokes gained in this specific range. 5.4 of a 6.2. Just a big deal. All in the 400 450. Again, 75% of the par fours fall into this range at Sedgefield. So we're going to take a look at both of those. Our top, oh my goodness, our top total par 4 performers in the field this week from this calendar year. Denny McCarthy, Adam Scott, Hideki, Thomas Detry, Taylor Moore, Chris Kirk, Eric Cole, Aaron Rye, Stefan Jaeger, and Russell Henley. Skipping Keith Mitchell, he's withdrawn. Looking at the specific length of par 4s here, a lot of overlap, but we do get a few new names. Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Thomas Detry, Akshay Bhatia, Chris Kirk, Aaron Rye, Adam Scott, Justin Suh, Shane Lowry, and Ben Griffin. But what I want you to notice is, I'll even highlight the top, go to here, Dylan Wu. We'll call Sam Burns an outlier, even though he's tied for 12th on the specific length. None of the players that are, great to elite in the 400 to 450 par 4s are bad. They're still good to great and even elite in the par 4s. Again, you can take out this 67th from Taylor Montgomery. He's withdrawn. The worst is 38th from Justin Suh in terms of total par 4s. So a lot of correlation here with these par 4s and these 400 to 450 length par 4s. Lots of correlation. Tons and tons and tons. So that does give you an idea of the players that are going to rise pretty significantly in my rankings because of the emphasis I'm going to have in par 4s. A little bit less weight in the 400 to 450s, but still going to carry quite a bit. So there's those two links there. All right, very quickly wrapping up the Fantasy National portion. Let's look at par 5s. Not going to carry a whole lot of weight, but you still have to score on them. They are two very, very easy holes. Decent, really, honestly, good to great eagle chances. You see Tom Kim played them well. They generally do get played well from our winners. You do have a fairly high miscut from Lee Biota, but 2nd, 13th, 2nd, 8th. Both par 5s fall into the 550 to 600, but they're pretty darn short, so they do come into the 500 to 550. You can see pretty even split here from Tom Kim last year. Pretty even split from John Huh. Generally speaking, you're going to have more in the 550 to 600. Wait, that's not... I don't think that's right. Aren't they 500 to 550? Yeah. Okay. So they actually played a little bit longer last year. I thought that was weird because both of them fall into the 500 to 550 because they're generally pretty short. Let's take a look at 2021. That kind of threw me. I apologize for that. Okay, so they generally they can lengthen them, I suppose. But again, the point generally stands that they're pretty even. They're pretty even. So I'm still thinking par fives in total, but they're not going to carry a whole lot of weight. As you see, I mean, the winner, only a 2.2, only a 3.2, 2.2. It's not a huge deal. So in terms of total par 5 performance, this calendar year, top players in the field this week: Davis Thompson, Sung Jae, Dylan Wu, Andrew Putnam, Cam Davis, Bo Hostler, Adam Long, K.H. Lee, Matt Kuchar, and Ludwig Aberg. All right, that's going to wrap up the Fantasy National portion. I'll bring this back to the Strokes Gained. Let's go to Microsoft Excel. We got a few things we want to look at. First thing I like to do on a Data Dive show is, and let me fix the page view before I forget because I generally do. I like to look at last year's mixed condition model, see how it performed, see where my thought process was, and see what improvements or changes I need to make to try and build a better one. Now, in terms of overall success, I would say this was good. It was successful. Only 2 missed cuts in my top 20. And I had the winner, Tom Kim. He was a little bit popular, sure, but overall, only 2 of my top 20 missed the cut. That part's very, very good. Where I am downgrading myself a little bit, you see the finishes. Shane Lowry is my number 1 player. It looked like he was last over the weekend. Brian Harman, Svensson, Hubbard. These guys did not play particularly well, especially considering they were in the top 10 of my rankings. I had some decent performances. John Huh, very, very unique, and finishes runner-up. Happy with that. Will Zalatoris wasn't all that popular. Played pretty well. Riley, Stallings. So this was good. I don't want to go. I don't want to give myself too much credit, but considering some of the previous mixed condition models, I've been missing upwards of 10 of my top 20 missing the cut. I'll accept this. I just want some better high-end numbers. I went 15% in birdies or better gained on short courses. Okay, so generally I like to use the scoring metric with the scoring filter, like easy or difficult, but I did use birdies or better on short courses. Interesting. We'll see how predictive it was here in a second. I did single out just the length of par 5s. Don't think that is correct. I did have Bermuda. I didn't do any speed filter, which is quite interesting. I only had 10% for Bermuda. Makes sense. Okay, I did separate out both. I had total procs and the 150 to 175. All right. As I just talked about when we went through the proximity page view, I would have quite a bit more emphasis in proximity this year, or I am going to. Don't know if I'll use 150 to 175, but what I can guarantee you is that they will not have the same percentage. Par 4s, I separated out all par 4s, really, 350 to 4 and 400 to 450. So it makes sense, put a whole lot of emphasis in total par 4s, or all of the par 4s, but I separated out 350 to 4 and the 400 to 450. Don't know if that's correct. 5% in approach, that's clearly a mistake because approach is very, very important here. And 5% in fairways gained. So it looks like I'm along the same thought process in terms of metrics. Definitely going to be moving some of these percentages around. That's probably what has led to the success in terms of the amount of players in my top 20 that made the cut, but probably also explains why I have a lack of top end performers, considering I need to move, or I believe I need to move some of these percentages around. But I am along most of the same lines here in terms of metrics. All right, let's see how predictive they were. If we were to sort this column on the results from last year, meaning Tom Kim is on this line and John Huh on down. How predictive were they? I believe I went to the top 20 because it was a convenient cutoff. Convenient, tie cutoff. Birdies are better gained on short courses, at least, weren't very predictive. Not at all. I do like birdies are better gained. Perhaps Don Ross. I thought short courses might be a thing. I don't feel comfortable using the easy to par filter because the Wyndham has gotten a little bit more difficult over the years. You look at the 500 to 550 par 5s, which is the only range that the par 5s fall in on the scorecard, not predictive at all. And that's why I think I'm going to be using total par 5s, because we saw they do get moved into the 550 to 600 range. This was an atrocious statistic for predicting the results last year. Putting, pretty solid. Proximity, very good. Total prox, being very good. Prox 150, 175 was okay. Okay. But the best, by far, and I mean by far, par 4s. 51 and a half, basically. That's very strong. When you have some metrics that are in the 90s. So you had a 51 here, and you had a 52 from the 400 to 450. So that's why I was a little shocked to see myself separate out the 350 to 4s. We're definitely going to be looking at these two this year, and they were very predictive last year. Approach, maybe not the most solid in terms of prediction, but they were still good. And then fairways gained. There are only 2 par 5s, so I wouldn't weigh that one too much. Hey, good evening, AJ. Thanks for jumping in the chat. I agree with you completely. We were talking about that a little bit. This is last year's mixed condition model. It just appears to be incorrect to put 15% on the par 5s. I still think you need to factor in par 5s. They are decent eagle chances, and the winners, top 5s, top 10s, have generally played them pretty well, but 15% is absolutely the incorrect amount of weight to put in the par 5s. So I agree with you on that. But there's a look at last year's mixed condition model, how predictive it was. I feel pretty good having 18 of my top 20 make the cut. I'm hoping that moving these percentages around will lend itself to more high-end finishes and be more predictive. So let me remove these before I forget, because I will, and then I'll go crazy. Okay, so let's take a look at Sedgefield in terms of a raw data perspective. We compared it last night against other full field courses, but let's really take a look at Wyndham. And we see putting has been pretty darn solid throughout, but it hasn't been very consistent. You have something as low as a 2, something as high as a 3.5. So it's a very volatile statistic. I don't like that as a statistician. The off the tee has been outweighing the around the green fairly significantly. Around the green, goodness. Approach has been pretty solid with the exception of a slightly high outlier here. So we're going to have the most weight in strokes gained approach, but looking at how high this number is for strokes gained putting, I do think putting might carry a little bit more weight than what I thought originally as we went through the strokes gained page view. Just for a quick look, 16% off the tee. That's all being carried in one portion of off the tee, as we'll see. 8% approach, 11% or 11.5% putting. Okay, so putting definitely needs to be in there, but we're going to be looking at approach as well. Moving into driving statistics. Look, it's Sedgefield. Distance just doesn't effing matter. It doesn't. It's not going to hurt you. But what you have to do is hit these fairways. You got to hit these fairways. The percentage, 45.5% more important than the average full field continuous course. Getting propped up a little bit by this, but you got some lower numbers too that are bringing that number down. So I am focused a lot on these fairway finders this week. You think about the players that have played the best here, the Webb Simpsons. Kevin Kisner was your champion in 2021. Never going to be long. Russell Henley's had a lot of success here. He's not long, generally more accurate. So I'm really focused on the fairway finders this week. Moving into scoring, it is one full shot more important for birdies gained than it is bogeys avoided. However, birdies gained have been losing their importance the past few years as it's gotten a little bit more difficult. But so have the bogeys, so that's a little interesting. We're still going to be looking at birdies are better gained. I'm just not sure which filter, especially since the short course filter wasn't very predictive. We'll have to see. Par threes, this is where looking at the raw data really comes in handy. When you look at these 3s, 4s, and 5s, look, all three of those ranges are basically identical in terms of what lead to the par 3 success. And they're different every year. Last year it was the 175-2. The year before that, it was the other two. So we're just going to be looking at par 3s. You do have a significantly high outlier there. Other than that, it's been very consistent. So looking at 5, maybe 10% in par 3s at the final mixed condition model, but nothing more than that. And I'm still leaning more so into the 5% because I want to put a whole lot in these par 4s. Just look at these numbers. They are huge and they are consistent. Par 4s are a big, big deal. I probably split out the 350 to 4s because they were generally about as much weight as the par 3s alone. But we saw they weren't all that predictive. Instead, it really does need to be the 400 to 450. We saw how predictive they were. 75% of the mixed condition model, or gosh dang it, 75% of your par 4s fall between 400 and 450. You even have a low outlier here. We might have 5% in 350 to 4, but it was completely incorrect to have 10% here, 10% here, and 10% here. You need to have a lot of weight here, quite a bit of weight here, and a little bit of weight if you want to look at this range separately. Only a little bit of weight there. But there's a look at your par 4s, and hopefully it makes sense. I mean, look here, 2.35 for just that range of par 4s, whereas the par 5s, all of them, both of them, only measure to a 1.3. So the par 4s, 400, 450, are more than one full shot more important than just the par 5s. So it's just a big deal here. Par 5s, it's interesting to see that this number is so high, despite the fact that when we went through the prior leaderboards, the 550 to 6s were carrying a decent amount of weight. They looks like perhaps last year was an outlier, because look at 2021, it was all in the 550 or 500 to 550. Okay. But when last year's mixed condition model, when we looked at how predictive the 500 to 550 were, it was the worst. It was the worst in terms of predictive. And that's why I thought perhaps looking at just total par 5s was the right way to go. But looking at the raw data here, 70% of your strokes gained total in par 5s come into the 500, 550. I don't know. That one puzzles me a little bit, admittedly. Fortunately, I have a day and a half to try to figure it out. Looking at proximity, look, this isn't going to mean a whole lot with these numbers. I just want you to understand this is a astronomically high number with a pretty low outlier here. These numbers are extremely high and extremely consistent. Minus 2020 looks like it was a little bit of a high outlier. But in terms of comparing against all full field continuous courses on the PGA Tour, Prox total 66% more important. 150 to 175, 75% more important. Big deals. Especially this Prox total. This is a huge, huge number. generally Prox is, in the, 0 to 15% range. To see a 65%, this might be the furthest away. Well, I take that back. Scottish, which I don't know how much I trust that anyway, since we don't have ShotLink over there. There's a 44 at the Byron Nelson, but my point still stands. This 65% is the furthest away from field average, positive or negative, and it's positive. Huge factor in terms of total proc. So that's going to carry some weight this week. All right. Oh, something I forgot that I wanted to do. I apologize. I'm going to jump back to Fantasy National real quick. I apologize because I made a decent point of it last night. 3-putt avoidance is going to be a key factor this week, I believe. We think of that. Average 3 putts per round. These greens are average size, and generally speaking, proximity is closer to the hole here. So that would lend itself to meaning 3 putts shouldn't be all that common. But they are pretty significantly more, or likely more to happen here. 68% versus 55%. And these greens aren't lightning either. This just explains the sheer amount of slope, the importance of lag putting. 3-putt avoidance is going to be a pretty big factor. I forgot because I generally don't come into the putting page view, but on fast and Bermuda greens, since the beginning of 2022, our top 3-putt avoiders on those greens: Russell Henley, again, the amount of success he has had at this course; Justin Thomas, Harry Higgs, Denny McCarthy, JT Poston has played this event very well; Russell Knox, KH Lee, Sung Jae, loves Don Ross designs, Matt Kuchar, Brian Stewart. Makes a whole lot of sense when you start thinking about the players who have played the Wyndham well. JT Poston, a former champion in 2018, I believe, maybe 2019. Russell Knox generally has played this well. Sung Jae's one of the best Don Ross players. I think they were about 12. The GCSA tournament fact sheet had it at 12.5 last night. So yes, I think 12.5 is starting to approach lightning territory, but they've never had a lightning speed designation on Fantasy National, so all I can do is go by or use fast because that's all they've had. That's why I'm quite curious to see how the speed designation is given after the tournament, because it was 12.5 listed on the GCSA tournament fact sheet last night. And we started the initial research show with that. All right, I apologize. Let's go back to Microsoft Excel. I did want to make sure I made a point of the 3-putt avoidance. I almost forgot. All right, so now that we have seen some of the metrics, perhaps some of the filters, who are the players that have performed well at those metrics at the Wyndham or at Sedgefield? So I won't remove any player, even though they've only played one time. I'm not playing Sanjay. It may burn me, but so be it. Miscut killed me last week and one and done. Yeah. Sanjay's just, I don't know. I truly believe he's going to get himself right eventually. This would seem to be a good place to do that. Granted, the 3M, you thought maybe that would be a good place too, but Sanjay has had a lot of success here. Four times in the past 5 years he's been at the Wyndham. He's averaged a top 10 finish. So you're right, it's a very dangerous game. It may burn you, but he's not been in great form. I'll give you that. All right, we're going to round out the show with taking a look at some of these players who have performed well at these various metrics that we have talked about all night. So let's start with strokes gained approach, the most important shot type generally in golf, and we know this is going to be a second shot type course. So our top strokes gained approach players in the past 5 years, specifically at Sedgefield: Webb Simpson, C.T. Pan, Hideki, although he is only 1 for 3 in making the cut. You can see he is not putt well here at all. but he has been hitting his irons well. A lot of players who have only played it one time. There's Sungjae. Zach Johnson is another course that seems to fit his style of game. Chesson Hadley, Siwoo Kim, another champion in 2016. Cameron Percy is now in the field thanks to, I believe it was Davis Love's withdrawal, but he is in the field this week, so Cameron Percy's a name to think about perhaps. Billy Horschel. Always got to think about Billy, and especially putting, and we'll take a look at that next. Shane Lowry, 2 for 3 here, but nothing inspiring in terms of finish. Russell Henley, 5 for 5. Denny McCarthy, 4 for 5. Knox, 4 for 4. There's your top approach players the past 5 years, specifically here at Sedgefield. We'll move to putting. Billy Horschel is going to be really high, I'm sure. Denny McCarthy. Callum Tarrant is the leader, but 7.1. But Zadenhout, 2 for 2. Cam Davis, 2 for 2. That's surprising considering Cam Davis is generally a bent grass putter, but he's performed well on these greens here. Webb Simpson again. Billy Horschel. Denny McCarthy. Alex Smalley, 2 for 2. Martin Traynor has putt well, but you see apparently hasn't done a damn thing else very well, but he's putt well. Bryce Garnett. Chris Kirk, 5 for 5. There's Chesson Hadley again. Richie Wierenski, 4 for 4. Average finish of 36. That's a big name for you, or a unique name. Don't know if I would use him in any of your lineups, but he's at least putt well here, and he's had good performance. Neesmith. Brian Stewart, 4 for 5. Sungjae again is putt well. So there's your top putters. Yeah, we'll look at fairways because they're so daggone important here at Sedgefield. Fairways gained. There it is. So your top fairways gained players the past 5 years here at Sedgefield. McGreevy, Pendrith, Eckroat, all one time. There's Billy Horschel and Brendan Todd. Doc Redman is hit a lot of fairways, just does not have a lot of performance, but he's hit a lot of fairways. Norlander, Sungjae again, Webb Simpson, Brian Stewart, Ryan Armour, Russell Henley, Jez Reavie, Martin Laird, Tyler Duncan. Okay. We're going to skip birdies gained. I want to go to par fours, absolutely, because I want to take a look at some proximities as well. Doc is also local. I did not know that. So Doc is local to Greensboro. Very interesting. Pete is always one to shout out. His Chicagoan, either native or by collegiate university. So interesting bit of note there. Thanks for that. Are you in the North Carolina region, or is that just something that you know that he's local to the Greensboro area? Our top par 4 performers past 5 years, specifically at Sedgefield: Webb Simpson, Ben On, Billy Horschel, C.T. Pan, Sungjae, Russell Henley. Look at these players who have had consistent amounts of elite success here at Sedgefield. And look at these close to video game type numbers in terms of par 4s. Now, Ryan Moore's only 2 for 4. He is from Raleigh and I'm about 20 minutes away. That's awesome. Very neat. Very good. I've been down to Durham a couple times, so that'll tell you where my collegiate affiliations lie. Beautiful area down there for sure. That whole area is amazing. English and Piercy. Look at these par 4 numbers, 3s and a halves and above. Just a huge, huge factor. I do want to look at 450 to 5 400 to 450 par 4s as well. Ben Griffin, again, this is a bit of an outlier, as in a huge outlier. 8.2, it's only 1 year, but look, C.T. Pan. Percy has played this range of par 4s extremely well here. Ben On, Norlander, Hadley, Horschel, Seabass Vincent, Chris Kirk, Harris English, Webb Simpson, Rory Sabatini, 4 for 5 in making the cut. This has been the only metric I think he's been up fairly high on, but he's 4 for 5. Sung Jae. Smalley. All right, we're going to round this off very quickly with some proximity. Yeah, I just want to look at proximity. We are running a little bit over on time. So our best total prox players consistently past 5 years at Sedgefield. Siwoo Kim, former champion. Billy Horschel. And Sung Jae. Bazainhoot, interesting. Shane Lowry. Webb Simpson. Huge amounts of success here. Yep. Smalley played at Duke. Yep. I did know that. He likely has played this in college. Imagine so. I do know, a few of the Duke players, Streelman, Smalley. I know there's at least one other I'm forgetting. Julian Suri's over on the DP World Tour. But yeah, you are correct in where my allegiances lie. Smalley seems to suit this course pretty darn well. Fairways, greens, it's all about the putter for him. Hideki's had some good total procs, but nothing in terms of a lot of success. Chesson Hadley, 5 for 5. Cameron Percy, there's Kevin Streelman. Adam Scott. Gordon Hadwin, been on a little bit further down. All right, that's going to do it for the Data Dive show. I will resort this on the average finish. Hopefully, I've been able to give you some metrics and some players to key in on early on in your research as you move forward for either wagers or DFS lineups. Feel free to reach out to me on social media if you have any questions. I did post some research around previous champions of the Wyndham Championship to Twitter and Instagram, so make sure you check out your preferred social media site. I posted that earlier. I want to thank Joey and AJ for jumping in chat. Really appreciate you all joining. I'm glad that you're able to get something from it. We've had a lot of success here on the channel the past couple of weeks. We're looking to continue that. And hopefully we'll combine, or at least I will combine, the previous 2 weeks from hitting the winner 2 weeks ago in an outright wager, having a very solid DFS for the 3M. Let's see if we can't combine the two and make it quite a finale to the PGA Tour season as we prep for the playoffs. So thanks again for jumping in chat. Thanks again, and thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love doing what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics and trying to win a little bit of money in the process. It wouldn't be possible without your all's participation and support of the channel, so thanks. For all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Wyndham Championship, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Wyndham Championship, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.